the dramaturgical tableau of intellectual carnage. Destiny, the veritable gladius ex machina of dialectical destruction, descends upon the cerebrally destitute cohort of ESG detractors like Zeus hurling thunderbolts upon the titans of incompetence. Here in this opus magnus of verbal vivisection, he eviscerates James Lindsay and his kin for their execrable foray into the labyrinth of ESG investing, a subject clearly as alien to their cognition as calculus to a cantankerous caveman.
Tax corporate manager, it is insane how people who don't even know what a W-2 is try to understand what a failed audit is. PP&E is one of the hardest things to track, especially at that scale. Bro, do you want to know, when I was, oh my God, what was the name of that math PhD guy? Listening to Republicans or conservatives or alt-righters or whatever the flipshits are, try to talk about how ESG was going to destroy everything because BlackRock owned like the entirety of the, basically owned everything, but like they don't know the difference between like a company owning something versus like assets under management. And they think that people think that the assets under management is the actual like ownership that BlackRock as a company has over like just like random. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say random. People that complain about ESG saying anything at all about finance were probably some of the most triggering conversations I've ever had in literally my entire life. Holy.
He's another donor. Wake up. He's a donor. And he wants to get rid of the cops who are regulating him,
That's right?
And so
he wants to defund the police, just the white-collar police.
That's literally the analogy I use. He wants to defund the police on Wall Street,
yeah.
Right? And so some people online think, oh, Jake, are you going to call him out?
Well, I think you were actually wrong there, but Lindsay did a poor job of elucidating his point. Still control the assets under management. No, it depends on what you mean by control. You don't own them. You're managing them for somebody else. Now, if you want to, here's the thing. I'm sorry. No, you get no credit for that. Not you personally, but he gets no credit for that. Technically, now, and I'll be honest, I might be some of my area of expertise here. I think that you can assign your voting rights to the people that are managing your assets. So I might have, I don't remember if there's an option or not. But for instance, if I'm buying, I think like an ETF, or if I'm buying a broad fund like that, then the person that trades the ETF, my voting rights might be assigned to them, or they might be passed to me. It might depend on the individual stocks that are part of the ETF, or it might depend on the agreement that you make with the ETF. And it might depend on what your brokerage allows you to do, or because there are emails that you get sometimes that assign you voting rights or not. Regardless, these are things that you might be able to argue that, well, you know, even if they're assets under management, they might be able to exercise more voting control or market decisions or whatever, because they also manage funds at the same time. These are arguments that you can make. But when you don't know, when you think that assets under management are the same thing as a company owning something outright, you forfeit the right to have any conversation about any of this. Like, it's like saying that like cutting carbs is good because like when you cut carbs, you can lose 5 pounds of weight like very quickly, and that's why cutting carbs is good. And it's like, well, I mean, it's your glycogen attached to water. Like, it's water weight in the beginning. But like the person's like, well, yeah, but I mean, they're kind of right. No, they're not. No, they're not kind of right. You don't get half credit because you say something 100% retarded, okay? That's not how that works.
What unfolds is not merely a roasting, but a bonfire of the inanities, a conflagration fueled by ignorance, hubris, and a profound misunderstanding of basic financial mechanisms. First, let us dissect the ignis fatuus at the heart of this debacle. The alt-right's apoplectic histrionics over ESG, environmental, social governance, investing. Like blind men grappling with an elephant, these detractors grope at disparate facets of ESG, spinning tales of dystopian financial domination by entities like BlackRock. They howl in tongues most arcane, conflating assets under management with outright ownership. This fundamental confusion, nay, catastrophic cognoscitio lapsus, renders their criticisms the intellectual equivalent of flatulence in a wind tunnel. Destiny, armed with the scalpel of financial acumen, slices through their rhetorical sludge. The distinction between managing assets and owning them is as fundamental as that between a magister and his students. BlackRock's assets under management represent not imperial dominion, but fiduciary stewardship. Yet to these legionarii absurdum, such nuance is irrelevant. Their narrative thrives on conflation, confusion, and conspiratorial phantasmata. Now observe their fixation on regulatory dismantlement, a perverse desire to defund the police of Wall Street. Ah, the delicious irony. These crusaders against ESG would strip the marketplace of its white-collar constabulary, leaving it as anarchic as a bacchanalian orgy. The very safeguards that ensure transparency, accountability, and ethical governance are derided as draconian chains by these champions of chaos. This, dear spectatores arguti, is not the rhetoric of reform, but the opus maleficum of oligarchic apologists. Their ignorance of corporate mechanics is staggering, a monstrum horrendum that defies comprehension. They prattle about W-2s, audits, and property, plant, and equipment, PP&E, as if these were arcane runes decipherable only by the initiates of some shadowy financial cult. Yet their grasp of these concepts is tenuous at best. Their critiques a chimera of half-truths and outright fabrications. It is a spectacle both tragic and comedic, a farcical parade of stultitia magistralis. Destiny's response is a masterclass in rationis claritas. He elucidates, with the precision of Archimedes drawing his circles, the intricacies of asset management, the voting rights attached to ETFs, the nuances of brokerage agreements, and the operational dynamics of fund management, all laid bare before the populace confusus. He demonstrates that to engage in this discourse without understanding these basics is to commit intellectual sacrilegium. Yet Lindsay and his ilk persist, undeterred by their own inadequacy, their verbosity matched only by their vacuity. The alt-right's crusade against ESG investing is not born of genuine concern, but of ideological paranoia. They envision themselves as custodes libertatis, valiantly battling the leviathan of globalism. Yet their enemy is a mirage, a phantasma terribilis, conjured from their own delusions. ESG is no Orwellian mechanism of control, but a framework for integrating ethical considerations into investment strategies, a telos as innocuous as it is necessary in an era of climate crisis and social upheaval. But their rhetoric is not merely ignorant, it is malevolent. By conflating ESG with authoritarian overreach, they seek to delegitimize any effort to hold corporations accountable for their environmental and social impact. They frame ethical governance as an existential threat, a hydra multifida whose heads must be severed to preserve their sacrosanct marketplace. Yet in their zeal, they reveal their true motives, a desire not for freedom, but for unfettered exploitation, for a return to the anarcho-capitalist bellum omnium contra omnes. Destiny's critique extends beyond the specifics of ESG. It is a broader indictment of right-wing intellectual decay. The inability to differentiate between ownership and management, to comprehend the basics of corporate finance, or to engage with nuance is symptomatic of a larger malaise. This is the plebs arguta, a mob of loud voices devoid of substance, their discourse a cacophony of inanitus maxima. The crux of Destiny's argument lies in the impossibility of granting partial credit to such sophistry. To say that their criticisms are kind of right is to concede ground to a structura fallacia. It is to validate their confusion, to reward their ignorance with undeserved legitimacy. Destiny refuses this compromise, wielding the sword of veritas with unwavering resolve. He demands intellectual rigor, a standard these critics are unwilling, or perhaps unable to meet. The roasting of Lindsay and his compatriots is not merely a critique, but an act of purification. Destiny burns away the dross of their arguments, leaving behind the molten core of their fallacies. It is a baptism by fire, a purgatio dialectica that exposes the naked absurdity of their position. And as the flames subside, what remains is not a phoenix, but ashes, ashes of a discourse consumed by its own inadequacy. This episode is a testament to the necessity of intellectual fortitude in the face of rhetorical chicanery. Destiny's demolition of ESG critics is not merely a defense of ethical investing, but a broader reaffirmation of reason, rigor, and reality. It is a call to arms for all who value truth over tribalism, a reminder that the battle for logos is never-ending. Thus, we leave this intellectual battleground, the corpses of fallacies littered across the terrain. Destiny, the gladiator of discourse, stands triumphant, his blade of logic unsheathed and unbloodied, for his enemies were slain by their own ignorance. And so, dear minds, let us take heed. In the arena of ideas, only the strong, those armed with knowledge, nuance, and integrity, shall prevail.